Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to measure out sifted cake flour anytime that you need to do a cake or something that calls for sifted flour. Many recipes that we do in baking often require sifted cake flour or sifted all-purpose flour. So this is how you would measure sifted flour amounts. Okay, so I'm going to do a cake recipe that calls for 3 cups of sifted cake flour along with 2 teaspoons of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. That's going to be sifted into the dry ingredients as well. But first, we need the sifted cake flour. So I have parchment paper. I have a pan just to hold the stuff that we need. I have a dry measuring cup. I have a sifter, of course. And I have a bowl with a lot of flour in it, okay? Because I don't want to do this over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the sifter over the pan that has the dry measuring cup in it. I'll also use this spatula here to level it off, okay? So I'm going to hold this over this. I have another scoop. I'm going to scoop objects. I'm going to scoop the flour into the sifter. And then I'm going to sift directly into the 1 cup dry measuring cup. What I want to do is have a mountain of flour over the dry measuring cup. Okay? So, you'll see here, I have a mountain of flour over my dry measuring cup. That's why I'm doing this on parchment paper, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tap. And then as I'm tapping, I'm just going to slowly move forward and knock this mountain back into the sifter and then level it off just like so. That is 1 cup, right? Then I have some flour in here. I'm going to put that back into the sifter. And repeat the process 2 more times. And that is my 3 measuring cups of sifted flour. Now, all this flour can go back in here. Okay, so now I have my bowl and I have my baking powder. I can add my baking powder and my salt right to there. That's what this pan right here is for again. Now I'm going to put this over this pan here. And then I'm going to put all of this flour, baking powder, and salt into the sifter again. Sometimes if you're making a chocolate cake, you'll have to sift cocoa powder in with the flour, baking soda, and baking powder as well. Okay. So once all that is done, can go right back into the bowl here, and this will be sifted. Some recipes may want you to sift this mixture here another 2 or 3 times perhaps, but I'm just going to do once today. What sifting does is it incorporates air into the dry ingredients so that when you make your cake is lighter and fluffier to begin with as a batter. Make a nice pretty cake, right? So there we have it, our sifted cake dry ingredients. So I'm going to set this over here and we'll come right back with the rest of our cake ingredients. Okay, so in making a cake, pan preparation is vital, right? So we don't want to have a cake all beautiful and then it stick inside the pan. Now there's a lot of different ways to do this. Some people will spray it with a non-stick spray. Some people will rub butter on it. Some people will put butter and some extra little cake flour on here. That's the traditional method, and it usually will work, sometimes, all right? So, what I've discovered through years of practice and trial and error is get a sheet of parchment paper, lay it down. I have 2 8-inch cake pans, which is what I'm making today, but it will work for whatever size cake you have. And what I do is I get an ink pen or a pencil, and what I'm going to do is just kind of mark the edge of the bottom of my cake pan. Just marking the edge of the bottom of the cake pan. Okay? And then I put the cake pans aside, and then I'm going to cut these circles out, and we'll be right back. I have 2 round pieces of parchment paper that will fit our round cake pans. I have a little bit of melted butter here. And all I'm going to do is put just a tiny little bit of melted butter on the bottoms and on the sides and spread it out as thin as I can. Okay? And then I'm going to take my piece of parchment paper and lay it down on the inside of the pan. Now years ago, I didn't do this step. I would just do the butter and the cake flour, and if by chance I happened to get a little bit busier than I needed to, my cake would cool off a little faster than I wanted it to, and I would end up, even with the cake flour and the butter, the cake still sticking to the bottom of the pan. And that ended up with big holes in my cake. Never did turn out the way I wanted it to. So a few years ago, I started doing this extra step with a piece of parchment paper. And what happened never sticks, okay? So I put a little bit of extra butter on top of the parchment paper. Then I'm going to take some cake flour, some excess cake flour, and just get a good little portion in there. And then I'm just going to move it around inside the cake pan. I want to get it all on the sides to tap away and just move it all around and get it all on the bottom as well. And then have another pan right here and then tap. Nice, clean, prepared cake pan. So we'll set this off to the side and we'll do the same for this one here. Okay, so now to make the actual cake batter. So we have, again, our mixing bowl here. What we're going to do is put softened butter, about room temperature. So if you put your finger into it, you don't have to put a lot of pressure to get your fingerprint in there. So we'll put that in there. There we go. And we'll kind of whip this up a little bit, and then we'll add some sugar, okay? Once that's done, we'll add our eggs. We have 2 eggs. We can put our vanilla into our eggs here. This is 2 teaspoons of vanilla in the 2 eggs. Okay. So we'll cream our butter and sugar together. Then we'll add our 2 eggs and 2 teaspoons vanilla, one at a time, until they're mixed in. And then we add our liquid ingredient, which is milk, and our dry ingredient, which is our sifted cake flour, baking powder, and salt. Okay, but when we add our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients, we alternate. So what I do is I take my dry ingredients and divide it by 4 roughly, and then I take my milk and divide it by 3 roughly. And what I'll do is I'll start with our flour, then I'll go with our milk, flour, milk, and then I'll end with the last bit of flour. And then using my spatula, I'll fold it a couple of times in the mixing bowl and we'll pour it into the pans. Okay, so we have our butter kind of off to the side, smushed down, soft. We'll add our sugar and we'll put it back on the mixer. Okay, so our butter and sugar look like this. Now we're gonna add our eggs one at a time. Okay, so the eggs have been mixed in. We have a fairly creamy batter here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my dry ingredients, kind of level them off. And this is just me personally. I just kind of draw a plus sign right in the middle to divide this into 4s. And then I'll take my spatula here and I'll just put one of those pie-shaped wedges into my batter here. It'll go back on the mixer, and then while it's mixing, I'll take my milk here and I'll pour in 1/3 of it. Now, I will continue to add alternating amounts of flour and milk until my batter is done. I have my cake batter here. It's all mixed up, all the ingredients are in. Give it a couple of folds. Right. Now I'm ready to divide into these 2 cake pans. And so I want to try and do it as evenly as possible. So I'm just going to pick the bowl up. I'm going to kind of pour my batter in. And kind of eyeball it here and measure across. Kind of scoop some more into this one. A little more into this one. All right. And then we're going to give each pan a little shake, a little shimmy, back and forth, side to side. This kind of evens out the layers, so I want to be able to eyeball and see if they are roughly the same, as well as bringing any large air bubbles to the surface where I can poke them out and get the air bubbles out. Okay, so that looks good. So I have a oven, 350 degrees. I'm going to put these in the oven, 350 degrees. I'm going to check them after about 10 minutes and then go from there. 10 minutes, we'll be back. They've been cooking for about 15 minutes. We'll let them go for about another 5 and see what it looks like. Okay, they look pretty good. We're gonna check them with a toothpick and see if they're done on the inside. Cakes baked for about 20 minutes. I took them out. And this is how you tell if they're done. If you can take a toothpick, stick them in the middle, it comes out and there's no crumbs or maybe like 1 or 2 crumbs, that's fine. And that's fine there. So we'll let them cool in the pans for another 10, maybe 15 minutes, and then we'll pull them out and let them cool again completely on a cutting board or on a pan or something. Okay, so our cakes have cooled. I can touch them. They're still fairly warm. The bottoms are probably still relatively hot, but I can take them and I can pick them up, so I know they're cool enough that I can touch them. Like I said, they're still kind of warm, but this is to our advantage, all right? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put my hand right on top. Now this works with smaller cakes, not so much with really big giant cakes, all right? See there? Comes out perfectly clean. There's just a little bitty piece of parchment paper that I can peel off, nice and easy. Beautiful cake here. Now, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna flip it back over, back to the original size. Now you'll see there's a little bit of a rounded hump, okay? I can leave that for right now. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cool this down completely. I may even put it in the freezer. But tomorrow I'll come back and I'll cut this off, I'll even it up, and I'll make some icing to go with it. And tomorrow we'll have a finished cake, okay? So the cake's got to cool completely, 8 hours, maybe more. You can't cut into a hot cake, and you definitely can't cut into one that just came out the oven, all right? You definitely can't ice in it, all right? So we're gonna take our cake and put it right here. I'm gonna leave it to cool uncovered, maybe about an hour, and then we can individually wrap these cakes up and place them into a freezer. A freezer, not a refrigerator, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna freeze the moisture and the steam that's inside of these cakes.